You can do this on turn 2. It's obscene. You can just completely destroy any aggro deck's chances of winning a game just by playing this on the board on turn 2, and then they literally can't do anything. Hello everyone, how's it going today? The Skilled Roy here, and I'm back with another custom card review. Except this time I do have something new for you guys. One thing I was sort of having issues with when I was rating the cards on an alphabetical scale was that it was hard to really perceive scale as well as nuance with my ratings. So instead I'm going to be doing a new sort of rating instead. I'm going to be doing it on 2 categories, both on a 5-point scale for a final score out of 10. The first category is going to be design. So this is going to be things such as the uniqueness of the design, the creativity of it, as well as the flavor and thematics of the card. And the next one is going to be execution. So executions refer to the balance, the rules text, properly formatted and understood about the card, including timing windows and stuff like that. So one is very much about the idea phase and one is very much about the implementation phase. And I feel like those are 2 very different things when it comes to card design, but are 2 things that are both equally important. And because of that, I think that's something that I would like to be reflected more in my designs. But yeah, with that, here we go. With the new rating system, let's begin custom card review. Alright, the first up we have here is Stubborn, 4 mana burst spell. It says, give an ally, I can't go below 1 health or die this round. This was sent in by Inkublu. Thank you so much for sending this in. This is a really, really cool effect, and it's actually not as broken as you might think it is. Now obviously the biggest comparison point for this sort of effect is Unyielding Spirit. That was a card that largely was one of the most complained cards I've ever seen, back when it was also at burst speed as well, and this is also at burst speed. Now here's something interesting. I actually think this card is quite fair in comparison. Not only is it much lower to the ground, but it still receives the damage unlike Unyielding Spirit, and it's only for a temporary amount of time. This means that you can use it as a counteraction to someone's spell, but it won't continue to become invincible throughout multiple turns after, which was the big issue people felt with Unyielding Spirit, was that if they ever had the answer, then they just had the answer forever. Meanwhile, now with Stubborn, it's mostly a 1-to-1 answer. In many ways, this card could actually be compared to a Deny, a card that basically exists solely to counter one other type of card, and it does that job admirably well. Now, the thing is that you might want to also compare this card to Riposte, as it also does a similar effect, basically gives a nullification of something that's going to kill it, as well as gives an offensive buff in Riposte case, but in this case it's a little bit more stronger on the defensive side, but it gives no offensive benefit whatsoever. So in that way, I kind of think it's fair. In a weird way, this is almost closer to Prismatic Barrier, but costs a little bit more for a much stronger type of barrier. But even then, it still takes the damage, so you know what, I think this card is quite fair. I don't think this would be seen in most decks, but I do think it would be seen in basically any Fiora deck that wants to run multiple ways to answer. And I feel like this is something perfect to answer those vengeances and things like it. So this card seems really, really solid in that niche, I think. Overall though, I think also Stubborn, obviously this is a Poppy card, and Poppy is super stubborn. I can't go below 1 health or die is super flavorful because you'll still take the damage, right? But you're persevering, you're fighting through it, right? It's just, well done on that end. So I think I am going to give this a design rating of a solid 4 out of 5. This is really, really cool. I really like it a lot. It's a little too niche for me to really give it a 5 out of 5, but I think it's really solid as a interesting sort of tech card. As for the execution of the card, I think it's really, really solid. It feels very fair. It feels very, I think, consistent across the board with most of its effects. The rules make sense. I like the nuance of its difference between it and Barrier. It makes sense in the region. All these things are big check marks off for me. I feel like the big issue, again, is just going to be the fact that the balance of this card is just outside of standard playability. But at the end of the day, I think that's still relatively fair. It's really tough for me, honestly. I'm going to go give it a 4. I'm going to give it a solid 4 because I think there's still more to push here. I think this is still good, but I think there's a little bit more that can be done. So I'm going to give this a final score of 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for the submission. It was really, really great. Alright, next up we have Grateful Graduate. 4 mana, 2/4 in Ionia, with Elusive, and copy all effects on me onto the weakest unit in your hand. Now right off the bat, I did a couple things, asking them, making sure everything was clear with this, because I know it's a little confusion. But basically, when it says copy all effects onto me, it means any buffs that were applied onto them before they were hit onto the board. So this includes things like hand buffs in Ionia, the buffs that are deck-based, such as the Omen Hawk or Hearthguard, things like that, as well as cost reductions, that sort of thing. Any effect that applied to the card before you played it gets applied to the weakest unit in your hand. A couple things right off the bat. It is a little concerning to me. I do like this card a lot, and I do think the region really needed a payoff for these really great in-hand bonus effects, but I'm really questioning if this is the direction you want to go. Because I don't think this is really going to be used for hand buffs and the ability to buff your hand a lot. It's basically only be used as a shenanigans card with Omen Hawk. What do I mean by that? One big issue I personally have with the with a lot of elusive units is that they typically push really high health totals. And when they start pushing really high health totals, and there's no way to really fight them through direct combat either, they start having a lot of issues with interactivity. I think a lot of people can sort of feel this back in the old days, back when we had absurdly high stat totals on elusive units. So I feel like this card is going to move further and further away from being used with hand buffs and closer towards getting this lucky with an Omen Hawk. Because you play this with Omen Hawk as a 4-mana 3/5 elusive that then passes on the +1/+1 of the Omen Hawk to the weakest card in your hand, which is probably a Blade Scout, and it just... I'm not sure if I really want Freljord Ionia elusives to be that much more powerful. It's a really concerning effect from that angle, but I do think it's completely savable. I think a solid just one stat total off this makes this incredibly more fair. If it wasn't for things like the Freljord stat buffs, I really wouldn't mind this so much. If this was strictly just Ionia, it wouldn't be that bad, but with elusive, you have to be careful because if it goes too high health, it just becomes completely untouchable in many ways. So from a design standpoint though, I really do like the flavor here. The idea, I guess, is that it's a grateful graduate because they've learned a lot and now they're coming back to pass on their teachings to the next person. That's what it sort of reads as to me, because their weakest unit in your hand, they're passing on the buff that they've learned, they're passing them on, you know, that sort of thing. It's really cool. I like that a lot. So I think the flavor is definitely there. I feel like the interaction and the intention of the design is really solid. So I think that's all super great. I'm going to give this a solid 5 out of 5 for the design. I'm actually really happy with a lot of the choices they made here. I feel like elusive is an inevitable payoff for Ionia to have these hand buffs on, so that all makes a lot of sense to me. However, as execution, unfortunately, because of how the card sort of operates amongst other buffs, as well as the fact of how powerful elusive can be at 4 health, it's just like, I really can't sign off on it, and it's just a little too powerful. I'm really scared because this card is probably not going to see play, but it's just a dangerous card to print, and that's the hardest card to rate for me. So I think I'm going to have to give it a 3 for a final score of 8 out of 10 as well. Thank you so much for the sending, Captain Klutz. It's a really cool card, and I really do want more hand buff cards, so please make some more. But just be very careful with elusive and 4 health, because it can get out of hand with just a single Omen Hawk. Okay, next up, I normally would do the signature spell of our featured champion, but because the signature spell ties heavily with his mechanic, I'm going to introduce him first. Right now, we have the 3-mana 3/3 ZIGGS. When I'm summoned, summon a Hexplosive Charge. Round start, if there's no allied Hexplosive Charge, summon one. And his level up is that he has to see it explode. And even though it says Runeterra there, the designer has told me that they intended to be PZ because his level up is also PZ. Now, Hexplosive Charge is a 0/5 vulnerable unit that in 3 rounds, kill it to deal 3 damage to all enemies and the enemy nexus. Super flashy effect. And once it explodes, ZIGGS levels up and he gets the same ability as before, but now when he summons his own Hexplosive Charge, or any of them get summoned whatsoever, they reduce the countdown by 1. So it's very powerful, and it can start chaining off itself really easily. Now, I was really shocked when I read the comments on this card, because that's something I like to do. I like to do some research on these cards ahead of time, and a lot of people thought this card was extremely powerful. And I actually completely disagree. One thing people really need to understand is that 3 turns is literally a century in Legends of Runeterra. The board state, as well as how much mana that players have had available in 3 rounds, at minimum, as when this card gets played, is basically you're looking at least like 12 mana being spent. And it's very easy to get rid of that bomb, and if you even kill one of them, it gets delayed even further. It seems almost impossible for me to really look at the ZIGGS card and be like, oh, okay, this is something that can see a lot of play in the future. Now, I won't lie, MOS Banapple, thank you so much for making this card. He did include some other support cards, but I don't have time to cover all of them, but they don't really address my main concern with the overall mechanic, because it just takes way too long to get a huge benefit out of this, and it just doesn't really feel like ZIGGS is actually get much use of this overall. I really do like the flavor of this card, though. It's super cool. It's like you have to set up these bombs, everyone has to counterplay and try to kill them as fast as they can, because they all have vulnerable, of course, and you have to constantly try to race against ZIGGS as ZIGGS keeps planting more and more bombs. You need to keep killing them faster and faster. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's great if the opponent's willing to play your game, but if they have like fearsomes, any elusives, any control deck, anything that can really just completely ignore the bombs, it just feels awful for you, which means that most cases it's not really going to be a super engaging game type for you, which means in most cases you're simply not going to be an engaging mechanic for you, and I'm kind of sad to see that, because I really think this is a really cool and unique idea, something that I would love to see in the game in a larger extent. But I just feel like the payoff isn't there, as well as like the means of getting there. 3 turns just simply takes too long, and I do understand how much consideration went into that. One theory you have here, right, is if they attack into you and then you play ZIGGS after combat, that inherently cuts a turn off of how many turns you have to wait. But that means you're holding up the mana for him, which means you're playing this probably past turn 3, which means that you're probably sacrificing your board already, which means that killing the bomb is probably pretty easy. It's just, there's a lot of things that sort of go off here that are like kind of issues for the card overall. Now, when it comes to the design, I think the design is a fucking home run. This thing is so cool. I love it a lot. I love the idea of having the sub mini game almost that both players have to play. We saw this with kegs being added to the game, where players have to play this kind of crazy game of chicken with the keg, where is he gonna blow it up? Am I gonna blow it up? Do I have to have an answer for his answer for my answer? You know what I mean? Like, it's super, super cool, and I feel like this gets almost to that level. Now, one issue I really do have with these bombs: why the hell can they block? What is this bomb is sentient? Is it gonna jump up and just take a bullet for me? Like, that's the biggest issue with this card, I feel, is that the bomb should not be able to block. In a weird way, ZIGGS is most notable not because he summons bombs, but because he summons infinite 0/5 blockers, and that just feels like a severe miss in thematics, and that's really, really sad to see, because I think this card nails it on so many other levels. If you just add can't block to these cards, they become infinitely better. So I don't want to give this like a low rating because of that, because it's not fair, because I think even they even mentioned that they wanted to change this to be can't block. So I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. It would literally be a 5 out of 5 if it did not have, if the bombs couldn't block. As for execution, I actually think 3 turns is simply way too long. If you play this on 3, you're not getting the detonation until 6, which gives the opponent way too much time to really combat it. Not to mention the issue with the bombs being able to be blockers as well is very odd. It's not really like a point in its favor for strength even. It's just extremely bizarre to me, and I don't think it really works well for as an execution of the concept. I do like the card overall. It just needs a different payoff, and I think a different timing on the payoff. Because right now it's really hard to imagine a world where the opponent just lets you get away with ZIGGS on the board and the bomb on the board for 3 turns straight. Like, most mid-range decks can one-shot the bomb or ZIGGS. Most aggro decks basically don't care, and most control decks are laughing at 3 damage 3 turns from now. So it's just like, I don't think it really works on that level, so I'm unfortunately going to have to give this only a 2 out of 5 for execution. I'm really sorry about that. Alright, but now the final card, his signature spell, Explosive Construction. Now remember, all signature spells can be added to your deck normally without the champion being there. This follows the same pattern as every other signature champion spell that is currently in the game, and this one is a doozy. This card is just crazy, not because, again, for the bomb effect, but this is a 3 mana summon 2 0/5 blockers. You can do this on turn 2. It's obscene. You can just completely destroy any aggro deck's chances of winning a game just by playing this on the board on turn 2, and then they literally can't do anything. And if they can't kill them, they just instantly die. So like this is to me an extreme here. Like, this clearly is another situation where can't block would be a huge change to this card that just needs to happen, because otherwise the ability to block with these bombs is simply just way too much power, because 0/5 blocker with vulnerable on turn 2 is not good. But getting 2 of them instantly, and then if they don't kill them, they get punished, it's a little crazy for any aggro deck to really surmount. I don't think ZIGGS would even see play with this card. I think this card would just be played on its own in PZ control decks, just as an easy, oh hey, boom, 2 gigantic blockers that you can't overwhelm through because they have huge health totals. You have to basically elusive or fearsome them, but the thing is, if you ignore them to get past them that early in the game, you're going to get completely detonated on, and you're going to lose, because there's 2 of them. It's like 10 health worth of damage you have to deal to these things. It's simply too much in that situation. With ZIGGS, it's just too slow, but for this, it's like too fast and there's too much of it. So it's just finding that perfect balance, I know, is so hard. So it's just like, damn, I really do think this card is really cool, and like I said, I love the explosive package as a design concept, but since they can block, it's just a no for me, unfortunately. And that's truly the sad part of these designs, is that like a small misstep like this can really hurt the overall image of them. Like, my ratings would change dramatically if these things couldn't block. So again, I'm gonna go with a solid 4 out of 5 for design. You can't block is the big issue here. And as for balance, as for execution, this is like probably a 1 out of 5. Alright, and with that, thank you so much everyone for watching. That'll be it for today. I had a really great time reviewing all these cards, some really great stuff there, and I really hope you guys learned a lot about some of the thoughts I sort of put into custom card design. Please tell me what you guys think of this new ranking system. I hope it sort of lends a little bit more nuance to my thought process on these designs, and helps you understand what makes like a 5 in one category versus like a 2 in another category, you know what I mean? But anyways, though, thank you again so much for watching. If you like, please leave your thoughts on these cards in the comments below. It's a really, really cool idea to sort of give me what you guys think of these cards. We can sort of mesh ideas back and forth if you want. And of course, if you like this sort of content, you want to keep supporting it, please like and subscribe, turn on notifications, hit the bell, do all that sort of stuff. You know I gotta do it. I'm sorry, guys. But it would help me out a lot. For small content creators like me, it really helps a lot with the algorithm because it helps YouTube broadcast my videos to more people. And my goal here really is to ensure that more people get onto custom design and start making more and more cards for Legends of Runeterra. But anyways, that's it for me. Thank you so much everyone for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.